Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to explain how this first project is going to work. I'm also going to show you what it is. Now, it's important to know that the first project isn't really about building the application. It's not about the final result. It's about the learning process, because we're actually going to refactor this a bunch of times so that you can understand different parts of React. So for instance, we're going to start off using class-based components and stateless functional components, which is kind of like the original way to do things in React. But now we have hooks, we have the context API and all that stuff. So once we build out the application kind of the old school way, we're going to then refactor it into all functional components using hooks like useState and useEffect. Once we do that, we're going to implement app level state using the context API, also the useReducer hook and the useContext hook. Okay, so we're going to go from kind of the older way of doing things, which is absolutely fine, and it's important to learn, to the newer way of doing things with context and hooks. Okay, now as far as the application goes, it's a GitHub Finder. We're going to be dealing with the GitHub API, the third-party API, and we can search for our users. So let's just search the name Brad, and it's going to reach out, pull them in. We have a bunch of components here. These are, we have a users component and then user item components inside of it, and we have a clear component. So if we want to clear up the state. But if we click on more, it'll use React Router to take us to the main page here, which pulls in some data. We're using just a custom CSS file with a lot of classes that are similar to Bootstrap and look similar to Bootstrap as well. I didn't want to actually use Bootstrap though. And then down here we have the user's latest repositories, so we'll make another request to fetch those. All right, now if we look over here, in the React Dev Tools, you'll see this GitHub state. So this is the context API. We're going to create a provider, and that provider will have a value that has all the pieces of state, including users, user repos, all that, as well as any actions we have like get user repos, clear users. All this stuff is going to happen within the main context, the GitHub state. And then we also have an alert state, as you can see here, which has, let's see, it has an alert value, and then it has a set alert method. And this is for instance, if we go ahead and try to search without entering anything, we get an alert, and you can see that gets added to the state. Okay, so we'll be implementing basically two parts, two contexts, the GitHub context and the alert. The alert is obviously much simpler. And then we'll just have a little about page here just to get into React Router a little more. All right, so that's what we'll be building. Again, it's not about the functionality. This will probably take longer than the next two applications, which are more complicated, only because we're going to refactor it a bunch of times just so you can really wrap your head around everything about React, class-based components to functional components with hooks, context API, not using the context, all that stuff. All right, so let's get started.